What's going on, guys? This is Real Deal Fantasy HQ with your boy LQ, back in for another great episode. In today's episode, we're talking about one more time, one last chance with Mr. Joe Mixon, people. I'm going to build the case for you. I'm going to give you faith. I'm going to give you hope and pray that he stays healthy this season, obviously. So I don't want to waste any more time, so let's get right into the episode. So one more time with Mr. Joe Mixon. I'm going to be investing in Joe Mixon, not too high. I'm not going to do any reaching, but Joe Mixon is going to find his way on my roster, being that he is a solid RB2, people. I definitely think Joe Mixon is being hated on right now. I definitely think the injury jokes, that the pinky toe fell off is a little funny, blah, blah, blah. But Joe Mixon's going to find his way to my roster, and here's why. Joe Mixon this season, I could see him finishing between, top 15, top 12, and he really needs this breakout season, people, not just for my fantasy team, but for himself. So if we look in between the lines, and I say in between the lines is his last 4 years, when he had those back-to-back seasons with 1K yards, he finished RB13, RB10. This is what I really want to focus on when he was healthy, when that O-line was bad. So let's talk about it. The O-line is still bad, people. So again, Joe Mixon managed to make something out of nothing to be a top 15, a top 10 running back-to-back seasons. So the facts are, we know what he can do. He's a solid RB2. He'll give you RB2, RB1 numbers week to week. It's just amazing how he was still able to have 4.0 yards per carry those back-to-back seasons that he had 1,000 yards with a bottom-of-the-table O-line. Now, also worth mentioning, if we're going to talk PPR formats, which should be the standard now, he managed to have 45 targets one season and have 35 catches, 55 targets and 43 catches with a 78% catch rate those 2 years, people, with only 4 drops in the last 3 years that Mixon had. So now you know where I'm going with this. Gio Bernard is out of the way. He managed to have those targets with Gio there. He still managed to have the big play abilities. He had 13 big plays in 2018. 2019, he had 10 big plays. So therefore, he still has that home run ability when healthy. So now with Gio out of the way in PPR formats, and Mixon's going in the 3rd round, and Mixon's going to be a running back that's going to see over 300 touches total. That sounds like a steal to me, people. Yes, Joe Mixon's going to find his way to my roster as my RB2/RB3. That's what people don't understand. Now, the Mixon hate is with people doing all these crazy draft strategies. They're probably going wide receiver and then tight end, which will probably be Kittle. And then they go running back. You're probably looking for your RB1 in the 3rd round. There's plenty of guys there in the 3rd round that you can get as your RB1. But if Joe Mixon's right there, you shouldn't be looking for him to be your RB1. Obviously, everybody's worried about the narrative of him being injury prone and his foot falling off, et cetera, the jokes. But you just have to have a draft strategy to where it fits you. Best player available, or you're going wide receiver heavy or running back heavy. It is what it is. But for me, honestly, if I can get Joe Mixon as my RB2, RB3, I feel like I'm winning the draft in the first 3 to 4 rounds. For the simple fact, you're getting a guy who's going to get 20 touches a game, people, with PPR value there, him catching passes out of the backfield with Gio Bernard out of the way. So I don't understand how it's this hard to understand. So I definitely need you to look at the facts. He's a solid RB2. He will be on your roster as an RB2, not an RB1. I'm not telling you to take that risk for him to be your RB1, and then down the line you start ending up with a Mostert, or you start ending up with a Singletary, et cetera, et cetera. I just want you to understand, as an RB2, RB3, he's going to be killing it. He's going to be lighting it up in your flex in your RB2 position. So with Mixon with this ADP at the 303, honestly, I'm not going to marry that ADP right now. It's still too early. The draft is next week. It hasn't happened yet. And even when it does happen, I don't see the Bengals drafting a running back, high or as a high investment in the first 4 to 5 rounds. So I definitely think Joe Mixon is safe to be the workhorse. I definitely know for a fact that they're going to build pieces around Burrow where they're going to, address the O-line once again. Not saying that, the Bengals haven't tried to address the O-line. 2019, they invested very high. Their first pick, actually, with Jonah Williams, and he spent his entire, rookie season on IR, dealing with an elbow or shoulder injury, whatever it was. And then he came back 2020. He only started 10 games. So therefore, that investment didn't look, too great. But he is actual good, guard. So if you look at his college tape, he's actually a bully in those trenches. So I definitely like that through the years they've been trying to address it. Even 2018, they took two, offensive linemen in the first 4 rounds. So they've been trying. It's just hasn't been working out because the O-line dealing with injuries. So therefore, if we look at Joe Mixon's entire situation right now going into 2021, it is completely better. Let's look at the facts. Upgraded at QB, upgrade at the wide receiver core that has longevity around these guys. T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd can coexist at the same time. They are a great duo. And I definitely think in the draft, they're going to try to bring in that third wide receiver. I don't think they're going to draft Jamar Chase, but if they do, hey, more power to you. But anyway, moving on, his entire situation has gotten better. This is probably the best situation he's had in his last 4 years in football. So I definitely think you have to reevaluate of why you hate Joe Mixon. Like, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense why people are letting him drop this far. I definitely think, it was not wise of us to draft him, in the early second round, almost the back end of the first round with, all these questions around the quarterback position. But still, Joe Mixon is still a very solid RB2, and I think that's what we had to learn. We had to learn from this experience of getting burned by Joe Mixon, because if we think about it, he finished RB13 and then he finished RB10. Those are RB2 realms where we shouldn't have been drafting in the first round for Mixon. So that's an L on us. You know what I mean? That's an L on me, because I definitely remember taking him in the first round. But again, the dude can produce. He is a RB2 that will give you week-to-week points. Even with only having 6 games in the 2020 season, still average 16 points per game. That is something I'm willing to have on my roster in my starting lineup. That is a start and forget for me. That is a guy that's going to see 20 touches a game, and he's going to see 300 touches this year, people. 300 touches and more with Gio completely out of the way, people. So I like a guy that can catch. I like a guy who can be in the trenches and in the goal line and get these touchdowns, people, because we all love touchdowns. So I definitely think Joe Mixon should be on your radar when it comes to being on your roster. So what is stopping Joe Mixon from being successful in this 2021 season besides injury? If he's fully healthy, please explain to me why he's not a top 15, a top 12 running back. There's nothing you can say to me right now that can prove me otherwise. You can't tell me another guy who has other questions around him like Swift, or another guy that we're praying and hoping for that he gets the full workload, Cam Akers. These guys have questions around. I have very little questions about Joe Mixon other than his injury. That's about it. That's the only narrative that people can give you about Joe Mixon right now. So Joe Mixon should be on your radar. He should be on your list. If he's there in that third round for you, and you already have a Saquon Barkley, or you have a CMC, or you have a Jonathan Taylor, et cetera, you better go pick up a guy that's going to see 300 plus touches. You better pick up a guy that's going to be very PPR relevant, who's going to see those targets out of the backfield. You better pick up the guy who has a 78% catch rate with only 4 drops in the last 3 years, people. You better pick up Joe Mixon, people. So this wraps up the episode. Hopefully you guys like the episode. Make sure you like and subscribe and share the video. Comment below on what you guys think about Joe Mixon for this 2021 season. And I'll see you guys next week for another great episode of Real Deal Fantasy HQ with your boy LQ. Peace.